instructed the prosecution that they couldn't use the phrase terminology as racial profiling, and they had to say criminal profiling. I had issue with that because this is a clear-cut case of racial profiling gone horribly, horribly wrong.
Yes, it is.
And I'm like, why was that left out? So I don't know. I guess it's over because you can't try this man again because of double jeopardy laws. But what's this next step? And that thing I put it on my Facebook page earlier this evening. This sends a message. It sends a message to me. Anybody who has a darker hue to their skin, they don't even have to be black. Anyone who has a darker hue to their skin, it sends a message that you can be mistreated in America, and not to the fatal to be killed, but just mistreated, and it's okay. I think that kind of validates those people who are in power, who do this on a daily basis, to say it's okay. Look, they killed a black kid in Florida. I was not going to hurt this person because he's black, and that's okay. And it sends a young message. I have a 12-year-old nephew. It sends a message to these young black men coming up that where do I fit in? Where is my voice? Why was this allowed to happen? Where am I going to have 2 feet to stand on if something like this happens to me? And then that opens another big problems in our society. And it's like, I'm just like dumbfounded, and just from all the responses on my show and the chat room and all the N-word usage, and like the guy was like, "Yeah, it really doesn't bother me that because you're doing it to get a rise out of me. I'm not going to give you that power." You know, if you're an employer or somebody around that you're attacking me, and because you really feel that I'm the N-word because of my race. Then that's an issue. But you're doing it on Blog Talk Radio and trying to get a rise of me. It doesn't bother me that much. So they were totally wasting their time. But it was kind of, like I said, it was kind of overwhelming, and I'm just kind of sick about the whole thing.
Well, I think that it was. I agree because I really wanted it to be at the very minimum to be manslaughter. I felt the same way you do, that if it had been at least that would have been some consolation to his parents as well as to the rest of America who felt this guy was guilty. But unfortunately, because as I said earlier, because of the way the law is there, and that's what they believe is being okay, he got off, and so. If you had been on that jury and they said you have to vote based only on the law, how would you have reacted?
In my heart of hearts, I would think that I would do the right thing according to the law. But like I told somebody earlier, I don't trust anybody who doesn't speak on their own behalf to defend themselves. I don't trust you. That means you have something to hide. So your innocence is not beyond of a shadow of doubt to me. And like I listened to earlier this night, I listened to the 911 call. I'm like, well, sometimes I can get the facts all messed up. Let me listen to the call again. I'd heard it on some of the different television shows, and I listened to it. And he was talking about, when he's talking to the 911 operator, he's saying, there's somebody, he looks suspicious. It's a black kid. He has a hoodie on and some wherever he said it was his pants was. And the person says, "Are you following him?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm following him." And they say, "Well, we don't need you not to do exactly." And then he says that he's trying to have a conversation with the 911 operator, and he also says. These assholes always get away. So right there, if I was a juror and I had heard that, and I'm sure they heard it, that's like, well, he had a vendetta. He has to. Yeah, this is what he set out to do because, so in my mind, that's intent. You had a gun. You are. Saying that from your mouth, that wasn't made up. Premeditated. And you went and you fulfilled what you set out to do because you didn't want another person, black or what have you, getting away with something you thought was wrong or suspicious. And you did. And then I see Mark Amara. What's his name? Mark Amara. I was watching another one part of his closing arguments, and he had, I don't know if you've seen it, he had a big slab of concrete. He's like, this is the weapon Trayvon used to.
My God, I did not see that. Are you serious?
Yeah, and I hadn't seen it either until I was catching up on the closing arc because I've been working, and I'm like, it's not like Trayvon Hulk, and I said this on my Facebook page. It's not like he Hulk smashed the concrete off the ground and start bludgeoning Zimmerman with it. That didn't happen, but the image that I'm sure the jurors got, that's a weapon, and it was huge, and he was carrying it around the courtroom. He's like, this is the weapon that Trayvon Martin used. Unless he actually picked it up, the judge should have moved. Strength. Yeah, I was like, where's the judge saying, or why did the prosecution was like, objection?
Exactly.
I'm like, what is happening? So I think the prosecution did not do their job. But then again, they are in the state of Florida. They have careers. Me and Darla and Nikki was talking about this earlier. They have careers to think about. Can I really do this in the state Republican? And win this case. So not that I don't think they did what they were supposed to do. I don't think they did everything that they could do.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I think, unfortunately, that's the state of Florida for you. It's not just Florida. I mean, it's Texas, too. It's many states, especially in the South. And it's not just even about race. It's just about the fact that these states have these ridiculous laws that allow people to get away with carrying a gun and using it pretty much for any fucking reason they want. Oh, you pissed me off, so I'm gonna shoot you, and I'm not gonna go to jail for it. And there was actually a case not too long ago where a man hired a prostitute hired an escort, and the escort was going to go to dinner with him, and she did, but then he wanted to have sex with her. She said, "This does not include sex. I'm just here to have a dinner with you. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna have sex with you." And so he shot her, and she died, and he got off because they said that she didn't live up to her end of the contract or some shit, and because of the stand your ground law. Fucking ridiculous bullshit. And people in this country are so fucking stupid to allow this shit to happen. It enrages me. It really does. How stupid people are. And as soon as it comes down to the point where you are face to face with someone who doesn't like something you said or did or whatever, even if you didn't slight them in the least, and they shoot you, and then you have to defend yourself, and they get off because of the standard ground law, then they'll say something about it. But most people in this country, unless it affects you directly, they don't give a shit. And I think that's the problem, is that especially Republicans.
Exactly. And I think now, like I was telling Darla Nikki, race relations in America and let's say July 14th, 2013 are worse than they were 20 years ago.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Yeah, I agree. I was thinking getting to the same point they were before.
Yeah, and I will say, as a black man, that I've always lived in the black community. I lived in and I like to say brown. I lived in a brown community when I lived in Atlanta, and we have work to do. We have work to do, and so we can get this stigma from, and not that we should change who we are, but we need to go above and beyond. Unfortunately, you have to do it in your job if you're a black person. You have to be above and beyond. You can't be equal. You have to be above and beyond to get the promotion. So we need to take these back into our communities and go be above and beyond of what people think we are. Because until we start changing the image, people are always going to think of us as animals.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that's like unfortunately, the problem is that it's a complicated issue, and people look at race.
Complicated.
People look at race as if it's a simple issue of people who are just bigoted or whatever. And honestly, it's much more than that. It's about socioeconomic stuff. It's about culture. It's about what is valued in that culture, whether it's education or something else. It's all these things that are combined together, and they come up to make a group of people, whether in this case maybe the black community, and they don't look at what is important in terms of how they're viewed or what's important in terms of education first or whatever, but they also don't have the same opportunities that some of the other races have because of historical bigotry against black people. So, but people don't look at it that way, and I've always said that they look at it like it's everybody's starting off on an equal footing, and they're not. But you have to do something about it. It is true that as a culture, as the black culture has to come together, and they have to actually make inroads into what's important. And this kind of stuff is so important. And I don't know, do you think that enough was done in terms of addressing this as a racial issue, in terms of the black community, or do you think that it was just kind of let go, or what? I mean, what do you think about that?
It's hard to say because it's been so widespread, and everybody's trying to tiptoe around it. We don't want to be racist. We don't always want to, because we don't be called out of using the race card. Like anytime somebody says something racial, oh, they're just using the race card again. And for me, and I know a lot of other black men, for us, this was our not even our opportunity, a chance to let the world see this does happen. This happens every day. Like I was telling somebody earlier, I was racially profiled earlier just today. Today when I was in the hospital visiting one of my clients.
Yes.
And, I'm being followed to the elevator and then glared at when I wasn't supposed to be there. So I think this was our chance to say, this happens. This happens every day. We're being pulled over, we're being stopped, we're being questioned, and nobody's doing anything about it. And so, but then I think when the verdict comes out, it's like, wow, we lost again. And so it sends a message to where this is okay. The black, I think I was telling Darlene Nikki earlier, we rally around the wrong things. And this is one of those things that we should have rallied around, and we didn't. Because like you said earlier, when it doesn't affect us and we as a community, we do have a problem with this, which we need to work on, we seem to forget about it. If we're not going to benefit from it sometimes, we seem to like, well, I'm not going to, or the whole statement is, we're not going to win anyhow, so why even fight?
Why bother? Right.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible attitude to have. A horrible attitude.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, most. I think that's what I was asking. I think whether you think enough is being done or not. I agree. I think enough isn't being done. And all sides really, not just for black people, but I mean white people and other races as well, because every race has its issues, and it has its own. What's the word? Its own persona, or the way it's viewed, or people have their own perceptions about that race. And I think each race has to work on how it's perceived. And that includes black people, that includes white people, that includes Hispanic people, that includes everybody. And I think that if you don't work on it, then nothing's going to change. The only way things change is to actually take a fucking stand and try to make a difference. And I think today's generation, unfortunately, is just very lazy. And like you said, all they give a shit about is what they can get out of the situation. And if it's not going to get them anything out of it, even though it's for the better good of everybody else, other people, then they don't bother. They just would rather just sit back and just relax and play the Wii or whatever, So
the thing is, because the black race, to me, we don't have a Martin Luther King Jr. of our generation. We don't have that voice who's not scared to go out and, fight the establishment. And we have, what's his name with the long hair? I can't think of his name right now.
Who? The long hair.
He used to be really big, now he's skinny. Yeah. Al Sharpton.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
We have him, and I think Al Sharpton, he's come a long way for being kind of having the militant views to being a little bit more open and receptive to other views. But I think but I don't think he's still part of the old genre. We don't have anybody that's out there that's part of our generation still picking up the fight, because we think we have a biracial president now. Black people have, we can make six figures plus incomes now. We're in the NBA. We have all these other opportunities, and they think, well, you should be good with that. But I'm talking about the everyday Joe that doesn't have those opportunities. Because everybody's not going to make $1 million. Everybody's not going to make $100,000. There has to be somebody that represents us on every level. And I think, and we don't have that in this generation because they'd rather go play Wii.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the issue. And I think it's not just an issue with black people; it's an issue with all. But it's a generational thing more than a racial thing. That part of it, is. And I think that it's just people who are really, honestly, just apathetic. It's just apathetic. They just don't give a shit anymore about things. They don't understand how important it is. To me, it's very similar to it's the analogy I guess I can make is like young gay people today don't understand the whole thing about HIV and AIDS that happened in the 80s and 90s, And so people who are like black young people today, a lot of times don't understand the things that people fought for in the 50s and 60s, because they've had the right all this time. So it's like